Hello everyone. This video is going to be going through my method and settings for creating a 3D snowflake ornament. The work we'll be doing will be in Adobe Illustrator, but you can of course use Inkscape or whatever tool you prefer to create your design. Lightburn for getting everything set up to actually cut out on the laser. And then the laser itself is my normal Atomstack A5 M50 Pro diode laser. It's a blue 5.5 watt diode laser. On the table here, this one on the left, this is the one we'll actually be doing in the video. And I'll go through how to create the design, how to import it into Lightburn, how to create this proper width slat so that the pieces fit together properly. You can get that nice 3D effect. It's all about finding that right balance so it fits together easily without having to worry about breaking everything, but so that it won't immediately just fall apart. The other two versions on here, this one is a version we spray painted it white and added a little bit of glitter into it to just kind of have a nice, pretty effect that my wife really liked. And then this one is the same design as the white one, just done in a dark walnut stain. I think it has a little more elegant type look to it. As we're going through this though, it is key to keep in mind that because this is on my 5.5 watt diode laser, the settings I'm going to share are the ones that are for my exact laser. Make sure you've gone through and done your material tests and figured everything out to see exactly what you need for your laser so that you can get some really nice results, whether you want to sell them, give them away as gifts, or just use them for yourself. With that, we'll go ahead and jump over to the computer and we'll start in Illustrator showing you how to create a simple snowflake design. And then we'll go through the entire process and then come back together at the end to wrap everything up. Thank you. We'll kick things off here in Adobe Illustrator, and I'm going to show you how to create a very simple snowflake. There are going to be a lot of better videos out there that go into the details of making a very ornate, intricate, pretty snowflake. But for the purposes of this video, we're focused on the laser cutter part. So I'm just going to make a really simple one that'll work well for that 3D effect we want to get for the model. So with our blank canvas, we'll come over here and we'll select the star tool. Click anywhere within your artboard, and we're going to make it a 6-pointed star. With that star selected, we'll hold the Shift key and we'll drag this out to scale it, constrained to the aspect ratio or proportions. Then we'll go ahead and recenter that onto the page fully. We'll come up here to Object, Path, Offset Path. What we're doing with this is we're going to do an inner offset, and we want to make an inner version of this star that has a different thickness between them. That is the thickness of the wood we want left when we do the cutout. The thing you want to do here is you want to make sure that it's thick enough that it'll be nice and sturdy. It's not going to break easily, but not so thick that you can't do anything with the design. So right here, this is at a 10-point outer offset, which is too thin of a line. So we'll do a -20 to do an interior offset. And that gives me a nice 20-point or 20 pixel thickness for these lines where the wood will be. I'm going to hit OK to have that in there. With this selected again, we're going to do a Control-C and then a Control-Shift-V, which will paste that same object in place. Come up here to Object, Transform, and Rotate. We want to have this one be at that halfway point between the points of the star. It's a 6-pointed star, and of course a circle has 360 degrees, so that means each point is at a 60-degree offset. To get that halfway point, we want to rotate it by 30 degrees. So we're going to do a 30 degree, and now you can see we have that nice halfway point offset for it. We'll click OK. We want to select the backing star first, hold Shift and select the front star. Come over here to Pathfinder and do a -front. And that gives us these nice little geometric cutouts for it. Now what we want to do is we want to combine this into one shape of that being a cutout from it. So we'll do the same thing again. We'll select the large star, hold Shift and select the inner pieces. And again, we'll do the -front. And now you can see here in the layer, we just have a single compound path that is made up of all of that combined. We'll come over here, we'll do the fill and make it black. And the reason we do this is so that when we're looking at it, we can see everything that is black is what will remain in the wood after we do the cutout, and everything white is going to actually be that cutout portion of it. The next thing we want to do now is add in those lines to give us the nicer points of the snowflake. To get that, we'll just come over here and select the line segment tool. We'll come here to the midpoint and we'll hold shift and click and drag up. That way it gives us a perfectly straight line going up. That should be pretty good. Now, what we want to do is make that line the same thickness as we have here for this gap. And because we did that -20 offset, we know that that thickness is 20 points. So we'll come over here to the stroke and we'll make that 20. And now you can see this line segment now is the same thickness as the gap we have here to make sure that it has a nice consistent look across the snowflake. The next thing we're going to want to do is add a detailed point to the top of it. For that, I like to use the pen tool. Come over here, select the pen tool. It's also just a P on your keyboard for the hotkey. We'll come here to the anchor. We'll hold shift, we'll click and come up at a 35-degree angle. Okay. And then we will come up again. This time we don't want to hold shift because we don't want to go at a specific angle. But what we do want to do is use that smart guide to make sure that wherever we stop for this peak point, it's in line with the middle of that line segment. I'm going to go about there. Okay, then we'll hit escape a couple times to stop drawing that line. We'll come over here to our selection tool. We'll make sure everything is selected for that path. And then we will do the O to reflect. We'll hold the Alt key and we'll click here, left click on the anchor point. So what that does is that's going to give us a perfect reflection along the midpoint of that line and that line segment. So we're going to leave that at that vertical and we're going to hit copy. So now you can see what we have here is we have those, we have those two lines that are perfectly set up there. We'll come here to the direct selection tool and we want to come here and select the 2 points there and then hit Control J to join them into one shape. So now over here in this path, we have this nice pointy endpoint to the snowflake. One thing I'm noticing here is I think that's going to be a little bit big. So I'm going to go ahead and click here to drag this down and we will just scale this down a little bit, about like so. All right, that looks pretty good. We're going to go ahead now and add in a few more, I guess, pieces to the snowflake is what we'll call it. So we'll go back here to the line segment tool. We'll come here to the midpoint of this line segment. Let's go about here. We will hold the shift and left click and drag up about there. Looks good to me. So let's go ahead and nudge that down a little bit so we get to about the midpoint between there. All right. We're going to go and use the O to reflect again, and then Alt and click on the anchor point so that, again, we want to reflect on that midpoint so we have that symmetry on it. And we will copy. We will now select these all together and Control G to group them up. And now what we want to do is we want to select R for the rotate tool. And we're going to hold the Alt key again and click here on the anchor point in the middle. Since we know that we want those 6 points for it, we know that we talked about earlier, that's going to be the 60 degrees. So we're going to do 60 degrees and then hit copy. Now we've got that midpoint. We don't have to do that again. We can just use the repeat tool. So we'll hold Control, hit D, and that gives us that nice, full, well-rounded, symmetrical snowflake we wanted. What we want to do now is come here to the Select tool. We're going to go ahead and select everything, right-click on it, and do a Collect for Export as a single asset. We're going to name this, and let's call it Simple Snowflake. For this next step, I'm going to do the export. You can export this as an SVG, as a DXF, You can leave it as an AI file. What I like to do, since I'm going to be using Lightburn though, is I'm just going to export it as a PNG, and then I'll use Lightburn's image trace tool to give me the full shape I need in there. The reason I do that is it allows me to not have to worry if all of my lines are exactly right for the SVG, and I can use the same practice if I find another snowflake I want to purchase for a design or anything like that. I can just get that PNG or JPEG, pull it into Lightburn, and then do the image trace. Actually, what I just realized is before I do that, I want to go ahead and round off my line segments. So what I will do is I will come here to the group. I will select these line points, go to my stroke tool, and I will change them to rounded caps. I'm going to go ahead and do that for all of them. So I'm going to stop the recording so I can go through and do that real quick. Okay, I've gone through and set the end caps for all of those smaller line segments to rounded end caps instead of squared off. You don't have to do that. It's just whatever you want your snowflake to look like. But now that I've done that, these points look way too sharp. So I'm going to go ahead and select those anchor points and curve them in a little bit. I'll just do that for each of these. Generally, you'd want to do this before you do that object repeat where I rotated it. That way you can make sure they're exactly the same. But again, we're not trying to make a perfect snowflake. I'm just wanting to show you the basics of it. All right. With that there, I'm okay with that. Go ahead and select that grouped asset, and I'll come here and leave it as a PNG, and I will do the export. Just export it here is fine. And now we've got that PNG of this shape ready to load into Lightburn and start the work over there. So let's go ahead and hop over into Lightburn. Here in Lightburn, we're starting with a blank project as always, and we'll do the Control-I for import. I'm going to select that simple snowflake design that we did. Then we'll hit Alt-T to trace. Generally, since it's a solid black and white, the default settings will be fine. You can tweak them a little bit if you need to, depending on what your image looks like that you're going to be doing the trace. We want to make sure we have this delete image after trace selected and then hit OK. Now that gives us a nice line shape of the snowflake. What I want to do first is go ahead and let's go ahead and drag this over. We're going to go ahead and scale it a little bit. That's going to be too big. Let's go ahead and make it 101 millimeters. Actually, we'll do the height 101. Okay, and then we'll keep that selected. We'll Control-C and then Alt-V to paste in place. And now we have the two exactly the same matching snowflakes. The next thing we want to do is add in our little circle that we'll use for hanging the ornament. For that, I'll just grab the circle tool, hold Shift to create a symmetrical circle. About like that should be good, but we'll see what that looks like. Go ahead and bring that down here, and we'll put it right about there. Let's go ahead and move this around a little bit, get it exactly where we want it. All right, that looks pretty good there. And then what we'll do with that, the circle still selected, we'll Control-C, Alt-V. Make sure we're resizing from the midpoint, and we're just going to shrink that down a little bit to give the inner circle for it. Okay. We'll select the outer circle and the snowflake itself, and we will do the weld together. And then we'll go ahead and select all of that again and Control-G to group it. So now we've got two snowflakes, two pieces of a snowflake, I should say, one of which has the little hoop on it that we can use to hang it from our tree. Great. Now, the next thing we need to do is make our little cutout for it so that we can slide the two pieces together to make the 3D ornament. To do this, we're going to use the rectangle tool, but What you're going to need to understand is, one, the thickness of your material. I'm going to be using 3mm basswood. And then you'll need to know the kerf for your laser. There are a lot of tools out there that can kind of help you understand what the kerf is. For me, because my Atomstack A5 M50 Pro laser has a 0.08 minimum size spot for the laser, that lets me know what my kerf is after I did all of my tests. So the reason we need to know that is I will come here and I will select the rectangle tool. I'm just going to go ahead and make it whatever it needs to be. I'm going to unlock the aspect ratio. For the height initially, it needs to at least be, you want to start with the thickness of your material. So mine's 3mm basswood. Now, again, because like I said, my Atomstack has that 0.08 point spot size, and I did the kerf test. So what I need to do then is I'm going to change this and drop that a little bit smaller and make it a 2.92. And it's not a big difference, but it's enough to allow everything to fit together properly. You want to ensure that when you're doing this, it slides together and it gets a good solid fit, but not that you have to force it and risk breaking the ornament. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go in with the snowflake selected first. Then we'll select the new rectangle, and we're going to align their horizontal points. Well, I did that backwards. I meant to select it the other way around, but that's okay. I'll go ahead and select them and I'll bring them back down here. And that allows you to make sure that that is aligned there in the center point for it. Okay. The next step, though, is to make sure we get that rectangle the correct width. So to do that, we want to do it to be half the width of the snowflake at this point. So I'll come here and I'll select the ruler tool. Move this out of the way, and we will draw from this point. Hold Shift and come over here to that point. And we can see that is 64.56 or 64.5 mm. Knowing that, we want to come and make this half of that distance for the width. So it's 64.5, so we'll make this 32.25. Now we'll come here, we'll zoom in a little bit, because what we want to do is we want to nudge this over so that the edge of the rectangle hits the very point of this star. So let's go ahead and nudge it over a little bit. And, okay, so not quite. It should be good enough, but let's go ahead and just nudge it a little bit more. Nope, too much. 902. 912. 932. And there we go. That's about perfect. Oh yeah, that's good. Okay, so what we'll do then is we will come here, we will select the snowflake first, then the rectangle. Oh, actually before I do this minus, I want to go ahead and duplicate this rectangle so I can do the same on the other snowflake. So we'll go ahead and select that, Control C, Control V, just get that one over here out of the way. Now we'll come back, we'll select the snowflake, then the rectangle with the Shift key. And what we want to do here is we want to do the Boolean subtract. Now you can see what that gave us is it subtracted the rectangle from the snowflake shape so that we have that gap so we can slot and slide the two pieces together. We do the same thing for this snowflake on the opposite side. So we'll select the rectangle, then select the snowflake, align them horizontally. I'm going to take this and move it over here to this side. And then we will bring it in. Let's go ahead and zoom in here. I want to go ahead and keep scooting that in. Okay. Go 5. New. 1 7. 1 6. 1 6 5. There we go. Okay, we'll zoom out again. We'll select the snowflake and then the rectangle And the same thing, we want to do the Boolean subtract. And now you can see we have the two pieces of the snowflake that can fit together. The next thing I'll go over are the actual settings for the laser and cutting on the basswood. But first, let me go ahead and get these lined up. It's triggering me that they're not lined up correctly on their bottoms. There we go. So as I said earlier, I'm going to be cutting this out of 3mm basswood. So if I go over here to my library, I can go to my basswood, the 3mm, which is functionally equivalent to the 1/8 inch, and I want to do my cut settings. So as I went through and I did my testing, in order to get a really clean cut with minimal charring, minimal burning, minimal anything negative with it, I determined that going at 250 millimeters per minute, 80% max power, and doing 3 passes gave me exactly what I needed to cut that out so that all the pieces came out nice and clean. So we'll go ahead and hit OK on that. We'll go ahead and assign that up to our layer. Again, that's the 250 speed, 80% power, 3 passes. I will be running this with air assist because it helps to prevent flare-ups and potential risks of fire, and it also gives me a much cleaner cut. Let me go ahead and scoot this over a little bit over here so I don't waste as much space on the material. Now with this, if I come here and I look at my preview, you can see here it's going to take about 33 minutes. You can tweak this up and down. If you have a more powerful laser, of course, you can go at a faster speed and you won't have to take as long. But with my Atomstack, it is at 5.5 watt blue diode laser. Running at that 250 millimeters per minute is pretty much where I have to be to guarantee that everything will nice and cleanly cut through for it. So with that there, I'm going to go and leave that in. I'm going to go ahead and send this over to my laser, and we'll do, again, the sped up cutting out of it. And then we'll come back together at the end to see how it all fits together and basically end up where we started at the beginning of the video. So feel free to skip through the lasering if you don't care about that one, and I will see you there at the end. And now we're at the end. This is with the 2 pieces for the ornament pulled directly off the laser. I did not mask this wood, and so you'll notice there is charring around the edges here where we've got the flashback from my honeycomb bed. If you are going to be keeping it this standard wood, masking the wood before you do your cuts is going to be a requirement. If you're going to stain it or paint it, then you're probably okay. You can save that step, save yourself a little time. But again, like I said, it's really nice. It fits together nice and firm, so we have a good solid fit. By having that slat in there, it allows us to ship it as a flat pack if we want to, if we're sending it to family members, or if you decide you want to sell them. But because it is a good tight fit, it stays together nice and tight for when they're actually hanging it from their tree. But that's really it. I've really enjoyed making these. It's a lot of fun going through and creating all the different designs. We've got that one. This one's similar, but you can tell it's a little bit different with the way I spec'd everything out. I have several other versions I've done as well, a little bit more ornate with the snowflake. But the great thing is it's a snowflake. They're not supposed to be the same. Be creative. Go in there, design exactly what you want to, add circles, add angles, whatever you think looks nice. There's really no wrong answer with this. It all just makes sure that you have that slat in there so everything fits together, and you can create some really fun and pretty ornaments with your laser for friends, family, whatever you like. hopefully this was useful to someone and you enjoyed kind of going through this video. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear them down in the comments below. Or if you have any requests for other videos you'd like me to do, I'm always open to ideas of things I can try, things I can do, things I can show other people for an easier way to get through things. But with that, I appreciate you all for watching, and I hope everyone has a great time out there with their lasers. Have a great time.